Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we've got your indie games covered. Today we're going to be taking a look at a unique early access game called Grimm and Tonic. And while I definitely want to recommend this game, I just can't, or at least I just can't just yet. But before I get into the game's critique, let's get into its story. More or less, you start off as a poor working stiff with no name and no face, and you're just kind of fed up with your job. And having been pushed to your breaking point, you end up getting laid off and wake up one morning with a sour taste in your mouth. Unfortunately, that sour taste isn't the leftover from your hard night drinking, it's the taste of death. Walking downstairs to get a glass of water to hopefully chase away your hangover, you run into Death himself, who regrettably informs you that you are indeed dead. And as your life has been squandered on trying to make your fortune and failing, and foregoing all relationships and friendships in order to try and just cut your way through your own life, somehow this has left you without a soul. And apparently your soul getting so bored that it just up and leaves your body is not exactly a common occurrence, so in order to buy himself some time and figure out exactly what to do with your unique case, Death puts you to work in his spiritual dive bar called the Dead End. Taking on the role of a part-time bartender in this afterlife day job, you'll more or less be expected to interact with customers, making them drinks and engaging in conversation in hopes that they can leave the Dead End in a better emotional or at least mental state than when they walked in. And as such, you'll navigate through each of the conversations and bartending interactions in a quite beautifully rendered graphic novel or webcomic style rendering of a game. The really unique and almost hand-drawn visual novel style is paired to a nice, funky, jazzy kind of backbeat that really does create a great vibe for the player. Conversations in the game follow more or less two dynamics, whether it's direct questioning or building small talk. And each character, based on their cues and personalities, will engage better with one type of communication than the other. However, figuring out what type of character they are and which type of communication they might engage with better isn't the only guessing game you'll be involved in. Each patron sidling up to the bar will have their favorite cocktail, but they won't always tell you what it is. Sometimes they may give you clues as to whether it's going to be a sweet drink, a sour drink, or just ask you to use a certain type of alcohol. However, regardless of if they give you any cues or just tell you to surprise them with your own cocktail, there will always be only one best cocktail to serve, and all of the rest of them are pretty much going to be fails. However, thankfully the game doesn't just throw you behind a rendition of an actual bar, and it gives you the cocktail grimoire to suit your needs. And as grimoire is the term used to denote a spell book, a cocktail grimoire is pretty much a book of cocktail spells. So while there is no actual mixing of martinis in this game, you will have to know a bit about the background of each drink to know if it's going to suit your customers' desires. Though as interesting as these cocktailing and conversational aspects of the game might seem to be, they're really not as involved as you might think. Most customers' conversations are carried out through small talk, even though a couple of them might require an initial probe for direct questioning. Additionally, once you get onto the portions of conversation that are small talk, you can pretty much click through all of the dialogue one after the other, with no real options or no need to change back into direct questioning. Likewise, as soon as a cocktail is served, the characters generally stay with it, so you can click through the dialogue until they require another drink. And after following the cycle of questioning and cocktailing 5 or 6 times, your night shift is over, and so ends Chapter 1. However, as this is early access, Chapter 1 is the entirety of the game. On your first pass through the game, even with establishing your own learning curve, it may only take you about 20 to 25 minutes to complete the entire Chapter 1. And while I definitely wouldn't fault the game for being early access and only providing one of the 6 chapters for the game, regardless of the amazing potential put forward by the story and the art and the concepts and the music, the actual gameplay just kind of falls flat. There's really no backstory for your own character except that you are a working stiff who died alone in his own apartment. And while character interactions with your bar patrons do seem unique and a successful navigation does grant you 1 soul point, we can only assume that soul points do something toward restoring your lost soul, and that hopefully these characters will return in separate chapters. Each character represents a certain area of the city or maybe a certain portion of this spiritual afterlife, but there's just not enough going on in each of the interactions to really be very satisfying to the player. Without more or at least deeper interaction with each of the characters, the occasional phone number you might get from a digital character is the only thing distracting you from the guessing game of the cocktailing and dialogue. And on top of this, there are still plenty of bugs even in the first chapter. Though again, we do need to address that this is still an early access game that is of course a work in progress. Though at a price point of $9.99 on Steam, you have to have faith in the developers that they will improve the game and deliver on those 6 chapters they're promising. But the one last thing that I do want to point out about the game isn't about bugs or glitches or the fact that it's an unfinished early access game, it's about the actual themes and the message that's being conveyed through the gameplay itself. You're a working stiff who's died and his soul has vacated his body because it got bored with his work life. No friends, no hobbies, no passions, you are just a soulless husk that has been navigating his way through his world. And while the focus of the game is definitely trying to drive the player to realize that they need to experience life and not just toil it away, the way the game is crafted, especially with some repeated themes, is that bar culture and drinking culture are the way to have a happy life. And while this exact message definitely isn't explicitly stated verbatim, it is repeated several times even throughout this initial chapter. And while I really love the concept that this game is putting forward and the style it was rendered in, and I do really enjoy going out every now and again, I really don't think the best way to nurture friendships and enrich your soul is at the bar. But that's just my 2 cents on the underlying theme, and that does about wrap up the review. So as always, if you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, feel free to throw me a like or a comment to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. There are new and unique indies coming out literally every day, and apparently there's a ton of them still in development. So if you're even remotely interested, there's always going to be something to find right here. But if you're itching to know what games are coming up to be reviewed next, you can follow us on Twitter, and if you want to help me make these reviews, feel free to check out our Patreon page. But anyway, this has been Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.